The URSA Mini Pro is the best camera the Blackmagic have released, period. They're trying to democratize filmmaking and bring a $20,000 camera down into the hands of just about anybody. But have they done it right this time? This is the third iteration of this camera, and while the other two were achievements on their own, this is the camera that Blackmagic should have come out with in the first place.
This time it has buttons, dual CFast and SD card slots, built-in ND filters and an extra monitor on the exterior. And it will take a slew of lens mounts, even Nikon this time around. It's got 2 XLR inputs, SDI outputs, and unlike the iPhone 7, a headphone jack.
But all that means nothing if it's no fun to shoot on. So I took it out to the city.
Color accuracy is pretty great as you'd expect. However, it does deal with reds and magentas differently to a C300 and GH4. One thing I love is that it's more forgiving, especially compared to the GH4. There's a subtle roll-off in the highlights, which makes shooting in a studio easier and prettier.
So who is this camera for? You could shoot a documentary on it, but then Sony's FS5 and 7 kind of beat it to the punch. You could shoot it at events, but its low light is not incredible. You could bring it into a studio, but then Blackmagic have a dedicated studio camera. Do you see what I mean? The URSA Mini Pro is not the perfect camera. Blackmagic were faced with a choice: completely remake the URSA Mini or keep costs down. Their competitive edge relies on choosing the latter.
The camera uses the same sensor tech as before, the same software, and pretty much the same body, but that saved Blackmagic a ton of cash, which is why they've been able to spec out a camera for such a low price. There's no built-in shotgun mount, because if you want a shotgun, you can add your own. If you want an SSD, you can add your own. You'll hopefully save enough money that you can beef up the camera to suit you. It's worth noting that $6,000 only gets you the basics. CFast cards are expensive, V-mount batteries are expensive. Pretty much everything you're going to need to get this camera running is expensive.
That's why the original URSA will not be getting much of an upgrade. Dan May, the president of Blackmagic, told me that in order to bring that camera up to today's tech, it will be priced way above its worth.
That's the new car from Lyft. Its lifting abilities are pretty huge.
So, how does it stack up against the competition?
Here it is in a studio up against the GH4 with the same Shogun recorder and the same lens. In the end, we were able to match these cameras pretty well.
Now, faults. While the buttons are a huge welcome addition, I am not extremely happy with how they're placed. Once you've got the screen open, you can't access the buttons right here. Blackmagic are expecting you to have this on your shoulder if you're going to avail of those buttons. When it's on your shoulder, it feels very snug. It definitely could allow for more wiggle room.
There's nothing magical when shooting in low light. In fact, sometimes a fixed noise pattern can appear.
Unlike a lot of other cameras in its class, it doesn't have a lot of mounting points. We've got some 1/4-20s over here, but there's no hot shoe. In fact, I'm not even sure that you could mount 2 radio mics onto this camera very easily without taking off the top handle. Getting this top handle on is fine, but you're gonna need a screwdriver. That means if it comes loose on set, you're still gonna need that screwdriver. The biggest thing I love about this camera is the company. Blackmagic are on your side. This camera comes in every major lens mount, including Nikon. You're shooting SD and CFast cards, so you don't have to rely on expensive media. Canon are going to try and lock you into EF mount lenses. Sony wants you to use XQD cards in their FS7, but Blackmagic aren't going to stop you from doing anything if they can help it. They are kicking Sony's ass with their menu. It looks and feels and works great. Blackmagic Design does not have the same problems that other manufacturers face. If Canon was to release this camera right now, say their C700, it would cost a bomb because they couldn't compete with their own line. Blackmagic Design will never have that problem. they can drive the cost down and cram as much as they can into this camera. And that's why the URSA Mini Pro, through all of its faults, is the best camera that Blackmagic is offering.
I couldn't test it out against the GH5 because it arrived right as this review was finished. In the end though, they're two different beasts.
And the rest is VO. And the rest was history. Cut!